Okay, so we're diving into this idea of burying wood to, like, save the planet.
Okay.
Sounds crazy, right?
Yeah.
But it's actually based on this, like, really old log.
Uh-huh.
They found it in Canada.
Oh, wow.
Like, buried in a bog.
Okay.
And get this, it's over 3,000 years old.
Wow, really? That's
3,775 years.
That's amazing.
Yeah, and it's almost perfectly preserved.
Wow.
Like, it's crazy.
So what does that mean, like preserved?
It still has, like, almost all of its original carbon.
Ah, interesting.
Yeah, so it's like nature's giving us this thumbs up.
On burying wood.
Yeah, like, what if we could just bury wood and
it'd just stay there? The carbon.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah.
It'd be like locking it away
Instead of it going
into the atmosphere.
Right, like when it decomposes.
Exactly.
Okay, I'm interested. Tell me more.
Okay, so there's this article in the Washington Post,
Mm-hmm.
and they talk about how this method, like burying wood, could potentially sequester
Sequester, that's a good word.
like 10 billion tons of CO2 every year.
Wow, okay, 10 billion tons. That's,
A lot, right?
yeah, that's huge. Just to put that in perspective,
Yeah.
that's like more than a quarter of what the whole world
Wow.
emits from energy every year.
So does that mean, like,
So it's a big chunk.
problem solved? Like, is that it?
Well, hold on a minute.
Okay.
10 billion tons sounds impressive, and it is.
Yeah.
But we got to think about the bigger picture.
Okay.
Like, what are our actual goals here?
Right.
We need to get to net zero.
By 2050.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So this wood bearing thing, it could help. It could be a good tool,
Okay.
but on its own. Silver bullet. I don't think so.
So not a magic solution.
And magic, no.
Okay, so it could be part of the solution.
Part of it, yeah.
Okay, so for those of us who didn't like a science class,
Sure.
can you break it down? How does burying wood actually trap carbon?
Yeah, so trees, they're like carbon vacuums, right?
Right, they suck it up.
Exactly.
Right.
They absorb CO2 as they grow,
Okay.
but then they die.
And they decompose it.
All that carbon
goes back into the air.
Exactly. But you bury the wood deep underground,
Okay.
it's like a different world down there.
How so?
Low oxygen.
Okay.
Decomposition, it just slows way down.
Really?
Yeah, it's like hitting the pause button on that whole process.
So like instead of releasing carbon, it's like,
It holds on to it.
wow.
It's pretty amazing.
Okay, so but like what's the difference between burying it and just like
Like leaving it in the woods.
or like composting it?
Yeah, good point. It's all about the oxygen.
Okay.
In a compost bin, you want that oxygen. It helps break things down.
Right.
But underground, especially like in a clay-rich bog,
Oh, okay.
no oxygen. It's called anaerobic.
Anaerobic, okay.
And that's where the magic happens. The carbon gets trapped.
For how long?
Centuries, maybe even millennia.
Wow. Okay, so it sounds promising,
Right.
but I do have a concern.
Okay, shoot.
Are we all just going to be chopping down trees now?
To bury them?
Yeah, like, is that the solution?
That's a really good point, and it's something we need to be very careful about.
Yeah.
We can't just go on a tree chopping spree.
Right.
We have to do this sustainably.
Sustainably. Okay. So,
We're talking about using wood that's already been harvested
Right.
or from forests that are managed really well.
like sustainably managed forests.
Yeah.
What does that even mean?
Yeah, that's a good question because it gets thrown around a lot.
Right.
It's not just about planting a tree for everyone you cut down.
Okay.
It's about protecting the whole forest.
Like the animals and stuff.
Yeah, the wildlife.
Yeah.
The soil even.
So it's got to be like a whole system.
Exactly, like a balance.
So it's not just about the trees.
It's about the whole ecosystem.
Okay, so that's the sourcing of the wood. But then what
Or
about,
where to put it all.
right, like where are we burying all this wood?
Millions of tons of wood.
Exactly, and we can't just use any land, right?
Right, we have to think about the impact
On what?
on everything. Farming cities, wildlife habitat.
So it's not like we have tons of land just sitting around doing nothing.
Nope, space is definitely something to consider.
Okay, so we've got the wood sourcing and the land use.
Uh-huh.
What else?
Well, that log we talked about,
The 3,000-year-old one.
yeah, it lasted a long time,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
But it was buried in a very specific way.
So we can't just assume that any old hole in the ground will work.
Exactly.
It's
It's not a one-size-fits-all situation.
So what needs to be like taken into consideration?
The soil type,
Okay.
how deep we bury the wood,
Uh-huh.
even the local climate.
Wow. Okay, so it's complicated.
A bit, yeah.
Yeah.
You need to make sure the conditions are right
For what?
for that anaerobic decomposition we talked about.
Right. To keep that carbon locked away.
Exactly. It's not just about digging a hole. It's about creating the right environment.
Okay, so it's a lot more complicated.
Than it seems at first, yeah.
We've got sustainable sourcing, land use, burial conditions.
Right.
But what about the cost of all of this?
Yes. The million-dollar question.
can we even afford to bury that much wood? Okay, so we were talking about the cost.
Right, because this whole thing.
This whole burying wood idea.
Yeah, it can't be cheap, can it?
Exactly. So, like, is it even doable on a big scale?
That's always the question, isn't it? Can we actually scale this thing up and afford it?
Yeah, and how does it compare to other things like...
Like what? You're thinking
Not
about
that direct air capture.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you see? Is that...
Well, they're both promising in their own ways, right?
Okay.
With wood burial, the good news is we're not starting from scratch.
How so?
Well, we already know how to do forestry.
Right. We've been doing that forever.
Exactly. And we've got systems for transporting wood.
So we could, like, use what we already have.
Exactly. We can build on that existing infrastructure.
Instead of, like, reinventing the wheel.
Exactly. It's more about adapting and scaling.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
But still, the amount of wood we're talking about.
It's a lot.
Like, are we talking about burying entire forests?
Pretty much. We'd need millions, maybe even billions of tons of wood.
Wow. Okay, so that brings us back to the cost.
Because that's a lot of timber to move around and bury.
So is burying wood cheaper than DIA?
It's tricky. They both have their pros and cons cost-wise.
Okay, how so?
Well, DES is really expensive right now.
Like, how expensive are we talking?
It's still early stages, but it's up there.
Okay.
But it has the potential to get a lot cheaper.
As the technology improves.
Right. Now, wood burial, it's a lot simpler technology-wise.
So that probably makes it cheaper.
Exactly.
Yeah.
At least for now.
So it's like the difference between like a fancy sports car and like a good old pickup truck.
I like that analogy.
Both can get you where you need to go.
Right. But one's a lot easier on the wallet.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And maybe in the future, that sports car.
The DV.
Yeah. Maybe it'll become more affordable.
Right. But for now, that pickup truck.
Wood burial.
It's looking pretty good.
So we need both.
Short-term and long-term solutions.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
So how does this compare to, like, planting trees?
Reforestation.
Yeah.
Well, reforestation is crucial, don't get me wrong.
Trees are good.
Trees are essential. They clean the air. They provide habitats.
And they absorb carbon.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But there's a catch.
What's that?
They take time.
To grow.
Exactly. So with burying wood, we see results faster.
Exactly. It's more immediate.
Okay, so it's like...
What?
Like with reforestation, it's like investing in your retirement.
Okay, I see where you're going with this.
It's a long game.
Long game, yes.
But with wood burial?
Yeah.
It's like putting money in a savings account.
You see results faster.
Exactly. But it still costs something, right? Like, what are the main costs?
Well, transporting all that wood.
Right. You got to move it to where you're going to bury it.
And that takes energy, which means...
questions.
Unfortunately. Then there's the actual burial process.
Like digging the holes?
Yes, and making sure it's buried at the right depth.
Right. We talked about that. It's not just digging a hole and tossing it in.
Exactly. And then there's the long-term management of these sites.
To make sure it's all working like it should. Precisely.
So it's more complicated than it seems at first glance.
Definitely. And we need to be mindful of all those costs.
The financial costs?
The environmental costs.
So how do we even begin to measure all of that?
Well, that's where something called life cycle analysis comes in.
Okay, break that down for me.
So we look at the entire life of the process, from start to finish.
So from like growing the tree to burying it and everything in between.
Exactly. We assess the environmental impacts at every stage.
Okay, so it's a complex equation.
With a lot of variables.
And we're still figuring it out.
Research is ongoing. We're constantly learning and refining.
That's good to hear. This has been super interesting.
I agree. It really makes you think.
About solutions we might not expect.
Like burying wood.
Exactly. But we have to compare it to all the other ideas out there.
Right, because it's not a magic bullet.
No silver bullets.
Exactly.
So we've talked about a lot of different aspects of this whole burying wood thing.
It's a lot to take in, I know.
It really is. So, like, from your perspective, where do we go from here?
Well, I think the biggest takeaway for me is that we need to be open to new ideas.
Like thinking outside the box.
Exactly, because climate change...
It's a big problem.
It's a huge problem, and there's no one solution that's going to fix it.
So we need all the help we can get.
Exactly.
So, like, how do you see burying wood fitting in with everything else?
I see it as one piece of a much larger puzzle.
Okay, like what else is in the puzzle?
Well, we've got reforestation, of course.
Planting trees.
Right. And then there's switching to renewable energy.
Solar, wind, that kind of thing.
Exactly. And yeah, even those high-tech solutions like D-Day.
Right. So it's like we need a little bit of everything.
I think of it like an investment portfolio.
Okay, I like it.
You wouldn't put all your eggs in one basket.
Definitely not.
Yeah.
You got to diversify.
Exactly.
Okay.
And that's how we need to approach climate change.
With a diverse set of solutions.
Absolutely, because that's how we build a more resilient future.
And speaking of resilience, this whole wood burial thing, it makes you think about the connection between...
Between what?
Like everything. The forests, the land, what we do with it all.
It's all connected.
And it's not just about us.
Right. It's about future generations, too.
Exactly. So where does that leave us?
Well, I'm cautiously optimistic.
Me too. It's clear that burying wood isn't a perfect solution.
There's still a lot to figure out.
But it has potential. And it definitely makes you think.
That it does. And hopefully it inspires more innovative thinking.
Exactly. Because we need all the creativity we can get.
I couldn't agree more.
Well, on that note, thanks for diving into this with me.
It's been a pleasure.
And to our listeners out there,
keep those questions coming.
Keep learning, keep exploring, and until next time, happy diving.